Mr. Mayor, I can confirm you are streaming.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You may begin your meeting, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, council, the senior leadership team, and members of the viewing public. I see that we have quorum, so I call to order this public meeting under the Planning Act for Monday, February 13th at 5:30 p.m. As we usually do at this time, at the beginning of our meetings, we have a counselor read the land acknowledgement statement, and tonight that statement will be read by Councillor Nesnick.
Thank you. Good evening. We begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people.
Thank you, Councillor Nesnick. I now turn to the Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have some opening remarks. I kindly ask Ms. Wilford to share her screen. Public meeting under the Planning Act, Monday, February 13th at 5:30 p.m. All Town of Pelham in-person public meetings have been canceled. Instead, the Town of Pelham is holding all meetings electronically via Zoom. Please note that no decisions have been made prior to this public meeting. The Planning Department will be providing a presentation regarding the subject application. Participants are reminded, please ensure your background is free from offensive or vulgar material. If inappropriate material is visible, you will be removed from the meeting. Vulgar or offensive language will also not be tolerated. If inappropriate language is used, you will be removed from the meeting. Participants will remain in the waiting room until they are called to speak. Once your comments have been heard by council, you will be placed back into the waiting room where you may continue viewing the meeting. The Zoom chat is not monitored nor recommended to contact the clerk's department during this meeting. Please contact us via email at clerks@pelham.ca. This email address will be monitored during the public portion of the meeting. Decorum. The public meeting under the Planning Act is a formal public hearing requiring decorum. This means that all comments are to be made through the chair. If you have pre-registered to speak, you'll be given the opportunity to address council at the public portion of the meeting. If you are live streaming and wish to submit a comment live, please email clerks@pelham.ca. Please note that comments must be received during the public portion of the meeting, otherwise they will not be considered. Disrespectful comments will also not be tolerated. Please note that if decorum is lost, the meeting may be recessed and persons asked to leave. Public portion of the meeting. To allow for an efficient meeting, each member of the public will be given the opportunity to speak to council during the public portion of the meeting. Please note that after all members of the public have been given the opportunity to speak, the applicant or agent will have the opportunity to address the public comments and concerns at one time. Please note all comments stated and received electronically form part of the public record and will be considered by planning staff when preparing their recommendation report for council's consideration. If you wish to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please contact the planner responsible for the application in writing as soon as possible. Contact information will follow the presentation. Contact information can also be found on the Town of Pelham's website. For you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to agenda item 2, being adoption of the agenda. I have an amendment put forth by Councillor Olson that the agenda be amended to add item 4.3.1 to Mr. Mayor for discussion.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk. Is there any discussion on this amendment? Not seeing any, Madam Deputy?
Thank you for the vote. I'll begin with Councillor Eckert.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Nisnik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Duncan.
Yes.
Thank you, and that carries. Mr. Mayor, therefore, I have a motion put forth by Councillor Olson that the agenda for the February 13th public meeting under the Planning Act, special meeting of Committee of the Whole be adopted as amended. To you for discussion.
Okay, thank you. On the matter of the agenda as amended, is there any further discussion? Not seeing any, Madam Deputy Clerk?
Thank you. For the vote, I'll begin with Counselor Eckert,
Yes.
Counselor Hildebrandt,
Yes.
Counselor Kerr,
Yes.
Counselor Niznik,
Yes.
Counselor Olson,
Yes.
Counselor Wake,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, and that carries. Mr. Mayor, that brings you to item 3, being disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof.
Thank you. After viewing the agenda, is there any counselor who has a pecuniary interest and general nature thereof to disclose? Not seeing any. Madam Deputy Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That brings us to item 4, and I will now read the notice requirements into the record. Town of Pelham applications for draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment. Property east of Stella Street and west of Steve Bauer Trail being Kunda Park Phase 4. File numbers 2016-19-020-02 and AM-03-2020. Draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment to permit the use of the property for 78 lots for single detached dwellings, 2 blocks for environmental protection, 1 block for naturalized channel, 1 block for a walkway, 1 block for wetland crossing, and 2.002 hectares for future roadways. The Planning Act requires under Section 34 that council must hold at least 1 public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application. This public meeting has been called to satisfy this requirement. Notice of this meeting was provided by prepaid first-class mail to all persons who are listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 120 meters of the subject property on January 23rd, 2023. This notice provided information on the property and the proposed draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment. In addition to providing information, we will also receive any comments which any member of the public may wish to offer. If you wish to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please contact the clerk in writing as soon as possible. Contact information is available on the town's website and will also be displayed on the last slide of the staff presentation to follow. If a person or public body would otherwise have the ability to appeal the decision of the Town of Pelham to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but they do not make oral submissions at the public meeting or do not make written submissions to the Town of Pelham before the bylaw is passed, they are not entitled to appeal the decision. In closing, we stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed applications, and therefore any comments received will be considered by council. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have the senior planner with us, Ms. Shannon LaRock. Shannon, please proceed.
Ms. LaRock, you have the floor.
Well, you are muted.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to screen share here. This public meeting is for a development known as Kunda Park Phase 4, and the applications are a revised draft plan of subdivision and revised zoning bylaw amendment. This property is located east of Stella Street and west of the Steve Bauer Trail, south of Port Robinson Road. The application for subdivision proposes to create 78 lots for single detached dwellings, 2 blocks for environmental protection, 1 block for a naturalized channel, 1 block for a walkway, and 1 block for a wetland crossing. It also creates 2.002 hectares for future roadways to service the development. The zoning bylaw amendment application requests a rezoning of the lands from the residential 1 zone to site-specific residential 2 zone and the environmental protection zone. This is the proposed draft plan of subdivision. You can see there's Glennie Green here to the north. We have Stella Street to the west, and these are the existing lots on Stella Street. Merritt Road to the south over here, and the Steve Bauer Trail along the east side here. The lots that are proposed to be created for single detached dwellings are labeled 1 through 78 on the plan. And the blocks for environmental protection are block 79 here, and Block 80. These are the location of the provincially significant wetland. And these two blocks would be deeded to the town as a condition of the approval of this development. This plan does not propose an extension of John Street. The last iteration of the plan did. This is being done to keep more of the wetland intact and reduce the disturbance to it. And Block 83 down here, this is the wetland crossing. This crossing was approved through a class environmental assessment. So a separate process from the development applications that were reviewed by the or that are currently under review by the town. This approval allows for this crossing. It also allows for the water service for the development to cross this location. My understanding is that this crossing is to be a concrete box culvert so that it allows that connectivity of the wetland underneath the road. And I note that a lot of comments were with respect to this crossing. It is a little bit narrower than what Street A is that will continue through the development. Street A is proposed to be 20 meters in width, while this block is proposed to be 16 meters in width. That's also to minimize the disturbance of the wetland. However, it won't really be perceived to those actually crossing. The drivable surface of the road will still be the same width. It will still have sidewalks. The loss in the width will generally be where the town has boulevards. So everything else will appear the same. And this crossing will be designed to accommodate all types of traffic, not just emergency vehicles or pedestrians. This block, Block 81, is the naturalized channel. This has been designed to convey the overland storm flows east through the existing culvert that goes underneath the Steve Bauer Trail into the Forest Park naturalized channel. So that's how the stormwater has been designed, and those two developments will connect in that way. Block 82 here is a proposed pedestrian connection to the Steve Bauer Trail to allow the residents in this location and in the earlier phases of the Kunda Park development to access not only the trail, but the idea is that there would be a pedestrian connection also on the other side of the trail so that people can get into Forest Park and access the future park that's proposed in this area. This is proposed to be 10 meters wide at this point. There is also a sanitary sewer proposed underneath Block 82, that pedestrian connection. One thing I probably should have spoken to on the last slide, but I know there's a lot of concern that it's important that I highlight the history of this application because it has been so long-standing with the town. So the application for subdivision was received by the town back in 2002. It's been around for a long time. And during that time, of course, there was a change of ownership due to death of the previous owner. And mainly there were a number of environmental changes that happened and resulted in the need to redesign and restudy the lands to make sure that the appropriate things were being protected. And so many redesigns happened. One of the main things that people will probably recall happened is that the province determined and mapped where there were provincially significant wetlands and then didn't allow development in those areas any longer. So that was one of the main changes and can kind of give you an idea of what we're referring to. So that resulted in about in 8 different environmental studies and addendums and a number of revisions to the plan. In 2020, the developer came and brought a revised plan that addressed all the environmental concerns, but and submitted a zoning bylaw amendment as well that reflected that plan. Of course, more recently, so council will probably remember that that plan showed 2 crossings of the Steve Bauer Trail. And it was determined and directed by council at that time that there would be no crossings of the Steve Bauer Trail at all. And so the developer went back and redesigned a final time, and here we are with the final plan that shows no crossings, no road crossings of the trail. And because it's been such a long-standing application with the town, of course, the policy framework from a planning perspective is a bit more complicated and detailed than normal. The provincial policy statement from 2020, of course, was not in existence when this subdivision application was received. However, it does indicate that any decisions made after May 1st, 2020 have to be consistent with it, so it does apply. These lands are designated as being within a settlement area, which is where a mix of housing options are encouraged and where good use of existing and planned infrastructure is to be made. The growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe from 2020, this policy framework only applies to the zoning bylaw amendment application. And in that context, these lands are considered to be designated greenfield area. The goal for these areas is that they develop as complete communities. And of course, I'm going to do a very brief overview of what these policies entail. In terms of the region's official plan, the subdivision application was received at the time that the Niagara Region's policy plan from 2001 was in effect. That plan indicated that these lands were within the Fonthill urban area boundary. This is where a broad supply of housing was encouraged that would suit the needs of a range of households and income levels. And the 2014 official plan applies to the zoning bylaw amendment application. Again, these lands are designated greenfield area in that plan, and a minimum density of 50 jobs and persons per hectare was required across the designated greenfield area. The Niagara Region's official plan, which was just approved last year, I've just included that for information purposes. These lands are considered to be designated greenfield area, but this new plan does not apply to these applications. The town's official plans that are applicable to these applications, the Pelham official plan from 1974 was in effect at the time that the subdivision application was received, and the lands were designated urban residential. The plan from 1974 encourages addressing unmet housing needs in the community rather than historic demand. And the Pelham official plan from 2014 is applicable to the zoning bylaw amendment. The land at that time and currently are designated urban living area and built boundary, as well as environmental protection 1, and they have a greenfield overlay. The urban living area and built boundary permits all types of residential uses. And of course, the environmental protection 1 ensures that the wetland and woodland on the property would be protected and not developed. And the greenfield overlay requires that 50 jobs and persons per hectare. The town's zoning bylaw, 1136, 1987, it zones the property as residential 1, and the request is for site-specific residential 2 for the single detached lots, and environmental protection where the wetland, woodland, and the naturalized channel are located. And that environmental protection zone would prohibit development in those locations. These are the site-specific zoning requests for the residential 2 building lots. Some of the requests are actually greater than what is a standard requirement in the residential 2 zone. So normally the minimum lot area is 360 square meters for an R2 zoned lot, and the developer is actually proposing to go bigger. So it's, I think, closer to what you would see with the existing neighborhood. Not as small as what the standard R2 regulation requires. The lot frontage also is larger at 15 meters for all lots. There's also a request for 50% lot coverage for a 2-story house, or 60% where there's a bungalow, a front yard of 4.5 meters to the building face and 6 meters to a garage. The side yard is proposed to be 1.2 meters on one side and 3 meters on the other, where there is no attached garage or carport, or 1.2 meters on either side where there is an attached garage. The exterior side yard is proposed to be 3 meters to a dwelling and 6 meters to a garage. Excuse me. And no changes are proposed to the rear yard height or floor areas. There's also a request to allow encroachment for patios, balconies, and steps. They would be allowed to be 2.5 meters to the front lot line or a side or an exterior side. And 2 meters to the rear lot line, as long as they're not more than 1.3 meters above ground. And uncovered patios and decks are not permitted within 1.2 meters of a rear or side lot line, as long as they're not more than 0.3 meters above ground. These applications were circulated for comments. The region advised they have no objections as long as their conditions are implemented. And one of those conditions is that we recognize the natural heritage features with an environmental protection zone. And Town Public Works had no comments and indicated they will review further at the detailed design stage. The Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority has not responded as of yet, and so we're still awaiting their comments, but we will have them for you before the recommendation report comes forward. And a number of public comments were received. A couple of additional ones that aren't listed on this slide were received after this presentation was prepared. One from Lisa Erickson and one from Dave Nicholson. All of the comments are included in full in the council package. And a number of people have registered to speak tonight. And so those people, I'll let share their comments. The comments are generally related to traffic safety and required upgrades to roadways as a result of the additional traffic flows that may be generated. There were also a number of concerns about excuse me, potential construction damage and impacts. And those relate to dust, noise, and also student travel to school, safety with respect to that. There were a number of questions about the subdivision and its design. I did do my best to try to highlight why some of those changes were implemented on the plan when I was describing it. And so I'm hopeful that that will help to address some of those questions. But if there are questions tonight that aren't answered through my presentation or through the consultant's presentation, please feel free to reach out and I can assist. There were also some concerns about the requested R2 zone. And so we did provide a little bit more detail on that, and I'm hoping that will help clarify things. One item that I did not address when I was speaking to the draft plan of subdivision was the strip of land that leads to Port Robinson Road and is a portion of this property. Those lands are outside of the subdivision plan. And so there are no proposed changes to the land use or no roadways in that location at this point in time. They'll remain under the ownership of the developer and are just outside of the consideration of this subdivision application. My understanding is that there are significant archaeological resources identified in this location. And so it's not desirable to attempt to do the required archaeological work to remove those at this time. There are a number of technical reports relating to these applications. Of course, many more than what are listed on this slide. So at this point, I've included the ones that are applicable to the current plan that is under review. We have an addendum to the environmental impact study that was dated September of 2022. There's also a functional servicing report from November of 2022. There's a Forest Park and Kunda Park stormwater control plan from June of last year. That plan shows how the stormwater from Forest Park will be conveyed, or I'm sorry, from Kunda Park Phase 4 will be conveyed east into Forest Park. And the planning justification report that was submitted with the zoning bylaw amendment in 2020 remains applicable. The zoning request is the same in terms of its site-specific regulations. The only thing that has really changed is where those lots are located, and there are actually a reduction in the number of lots as to what was on the 2020 draft plan of subdivision. And of course, we have archaeological assessment as well. And if anyone wishes to have copies of these reports, they're welcome to contact me, or they've all been loaded to the Towns Engaging Pelham page. There's a Kunda Park Phase 4 project page there. And there are no decisions or recommendations being made tonight about these applications. Once all of the comments have been received, we will prepare a report for council's consideration at a later date. If anyone wishes to be contacted regarding future meetings or to receive notices, please contact me. I can be reached at extension 319 or by email slarock@pelham.ca. And that concludes my presentation.
Great. Thank you, Ms. LaRock. I now turn to the Deputy Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have the agent with us this evening. We do have Matt Kernahan from Upper Canada Consultants, and I do understand Matt has a presentation.
Okay, thank you. Matt, you have the floor, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, staff, and the public. As you've heard, my name is Matt Kernahan. I'm a planning manager with Upper Canada Consultants, and I'm the agent representing Sterling Realty, who owns Kunda Park Extension 4. Ms. LaRock's already done a very thorough job, even more thorough than I was expecting, explaining this application, so I won't duplicate efforts, and I'm cognizant of the value of council's time, so I'll attempt to be brief tonight and highlight some of the higher points of the application. That being said, I do have a presentation, and if I'm able to share my screen, I will share that with council. Everyone sees that okay?
I believe so. Yep.
So LaRock's already gone over some of the context of the site location, but what I will mention is that approximately 80% of this large 11-hectare site is currently a mowed field. There is a woodland located in the southwest corner, which contains a portion of a provincially significant wetland. I'd just like to highlight that no residential development itself is proposed in this area, and appropriate setbacks have been established through the various environmental studies completed. The information report before council this evening contains a chart that summarizes the long history of this application very thoroughly, so I won't get into too much detail or background here. There are 2 points I'd like to make, however. Firstly, as you've heard, this file has been active for a very long time. This phase of the subdivision would complete the Kunda Park subdivision itself, which has been under development for almost 70 years. As you heard, the current application was made back in 2002 and has been active since that time. Secondly, the reason that the application has been active for so long is that the owner has been working collaboratively with town staff to address issues and concerns from council and residents as they arise. And that topic is what I'd like to focus on this evening. So as you've seen, this is the draft plan of subdivision that was submitted in December of last year. Plan's very similar to the previous iteration of the plan in that it includes very large lots for single detached dwellings, all of which are on public roads. There are slightly fewer lots at 78 compared to the 84 in the previous iteration of the plan. And this plan has been modified in direct response to Council's January 2021 resolution prohibiting crossings at the Steve Bauer Trail, as well as in response to the public comments received between 2020 and present. First and most obvious change to the plan is the removal of the road crossings at the Steve Bauer Trail. Instead, the plan's been modified to include Block 82, which, as you've heard, is a 10-meter wide pedestrian connection, which will provide pedestrian-only connection between the trail and the development. Secondly, the plan includes Block 83, which provides a road connection between Kunda Park Boulevard over the provincially significant wetland to the northern part of the subdivision. This connection will better distribute vehicle trips between Kunda Park Boulevard and Stella Street and will provide a construction access for the subdivision. This connection was approved by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, as you heard, through a class environmental assessment back in 2018. Lastly, we heard loud and clear from the public that the maintenance of the trees within the Steve Bauer Trail was extremely important to them. In order to ensure that our development will not result in the removal of any trees within the trail, the natural channel shown as Block 81 has been made internal to the subdivision. This 15-meter wide channel will include significant plantings similar to the recently constructed channel between Rice Road and Station Street, and will actually increase the tree canopy in this area. This slide just summarizes some of the information I just provided. I won't reiterate that here. This slide demonstrates the proposed land uses graphically. For clarity, areas colored in yellow are proposed for single detached low density residential development. These areas are proposed, as you've heard, to be rezoned from their current R1 zoning to a site specific R2. Areas shown in green are proposed for environmental protection. These areas are proposed to be rezoned from their current R1 zone to an environmental protection zone, which will prohibit any development from occurring in these areas. As you heard from Ms. LaRocque, in support of this subdivision, a number of studies were completed. In particular, Upper Canada completed a functional servicing study and stormwater management plan to describe how the proposed subdivision would be serviced with water, sanitary sewers, and stormwater. Proposed stormwater management plan for this subdivision is highly integrated with the plan for development to the east and will receive flows from existing development to the west. The vast majority of stormwater from this subdivision will be collected within the stormwater management pond located in the Forest Park subdivision and then released to the naturalized channel that flows through that subdivision. The existing overland flows from the existing Kunda Park development to the west will be captured within the naturalized channel in this subdivision, then conveyed directly to the natural channel in Forest Park. Again, stage 1, 2, and 3 archaeological assessments were completed for the entire property. The assessments concluded that the portion of the site where development is proposed no longer has any archaeological potential and that no further study was required. As you heard, there remains an archaeological site outside of the portion of the site that is subject to this subdivision plan. And this area is not proposed for development in order to preserve that archaeological resource in place. And again, you've heard a number of environmental impact studies and addendums were completed in support of this and other plans, and most recently late last year. And that addendum to that study concluded that the proposed development would not result in any significant impact to the natural heritage features. So I did have the opportunity to review some of the public comments which came in leading up to this development, and I prepared this slide to summarize and characterize some of the comments received to date as I understand them. One concern that was heard from a number of residents was regarding traffic. The town and regional engineering staff have both reviewed this application and have not identified any traffic or safety concerns. The site has been proposed for greenfield development for a very long time, and development is proposed at a very low density. Traffic impacts are not anticipated as a result. This subdivision does include 2 vehicular access points, which will disperse traffic. Secondly, a number of concerns were expressed regarding construction access. I'd like to point out that it's anticipated that construction access will be via Kunda Park Boulevard, as this is the logical and most direct route into the subdivision from the surrounding area. Sterling Realty has developed subdivisions in the past, and they always employ a construction access management plan. This plan includes dedicated routes, procedures for dealing with and resolving complaints, and ensuring public nuisances are minimized. Some residents suggested that access should be from the portion of the property that connects to Port Robinson Road. As I've mentioned, there is an archaeological site in this location, and constructing an access through here would disturb that site, which we don't believe is desirable. Construction and access at this location would also be problematic due to its location relative to the Steve Bauer Trailhead parking lot and the intersection with Station Street, which is somewhat unusual. Some residents commented on the possible damage to roads from construction vehicles. Obviously, every effort will be made to minimize this, but should it happen, the developer would be responsible for to resolve any damage. Public comments included some inquiry regarding the crossing of the wetland. This crossing was approved by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs in 2018, as I mentioned. Shannon did provide some information about the details of that, but I'll just add that the crossing would be over a culvert, and a roadway with an 8.5 meter pavement width would be constructed over top of that culvert. That pavement width would accommodate two-way traffic with parking on one side. And as mentioned, subdivisions or sidewalks would be located on both sides of that roadway, similar to other roads within the subdivision. I'll just confirm Shannon's comment regarding where the road will be narrower than the 20-meter road. And that is there would be very small boulevards located beyond the sidewalks. Lastly, there were a few residents that expressed support for our plan. So we're pleased to receive the letter of support from PATH, citing the removal of the road crossings in the channel from the trail as the reason for support. Our next step will be to evaluate the public and agency comments, including the remarks we hear from council this evening moving forward. And we're very much looking forward to council's consideration of a recommendation on our file at a future meeting. I'll just conclude with some closing remarks. I should mention the owner of the subdivision has been working collaboratively with the town, the region, and the MPCA on this development for many years. The revised plan before council this evening has been amended to directly respond to the resolution of council and the comments we've heard from the public. We believe the proposed housing form and lot configuration represent an appropriate transition between the established neighborhood to the west and the developing neighborhood to the east, and that the development concept is responsive to the public interest. As I said, we're very much looking forward to advancing this development towards approval, and I'll conclude there and thank council for their time this evening.
Excellent. Thank you for that presentation, Mr. Kernahan. I will now turn to the deputy clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, that does bring us to the public portion of the meeting. Our first speaker is having some technical difficulties, so they've requested to speak last. In that regard, we will begin with Bill and Muriel Heska. Please allow Ms. Wilford a moment to bring in our public speakers. There's a bit of a lag.
Okay, thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk.
Join you now?
We can hear you.
We hear you, Mr. Heska. So you and your wife have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for this opportunity to give public input into this meeting. I'd like to do a little bit of the history. I think Shannon shared some, and so has Matt. But I think there's a little more issues, and this is primarily for Shelley and Brian and Kevin, new counselors. I don't think they've got the history back since this has really been in the fore for the last 4 years or more. I've been a resident of this area for over 40 years, so I've was here when the 2002 plan was first proposed for this area. So I've been watching it fairly closely because I'm part of the neighborhood and I've enjoyed it, and I want to try and maintain what we've been able to enjoy. This Kunda Park Phase 4 was first presented to council in October 13th of 2020, and at the meeting it was just Kunda Park. Then there was a meeting on the 23rd of November of 2020 where they talked about Forest Park. Both these subdivisions are owned by Sterling. They were, and Upper Canada Consultants have been the consultants for them through this project. But one of the things that I think you need to, the new councillors and the councillors that came from the previous council, they realized that these two subdivisions were very closely related in terms of the developers the same. They were going to be sharing roads, sharing some parks. Some of the municipal services are common. Stormwater management was a major issue, and there was one of the issues that came up a way back. There's supposed to be a park within Kunda Park, and then the provincial wetlands basically put the end to that. But then now the park has been moved over to the Forest Park. But I strongly feel that council needs to look at these two subdivisions together in terms of the total. When they go and get the plan for the Kunda Park detail, they need to know what when they get details for the Forest Park detail, they get the information for Kunda Park too, to tie them together. I think there's a lot of history there, and it needs to be understood. One of the things that came when we got this notification for the meeting, it came out as a plot plan, and it was on internet and also in mailed form. But one of the things that came, there was no backup information in terms of information, blocks, but no detail. And so I worked with Councillor Hildebrand, and then he worked with Shannon, and they set up this Engaging Pelham, where they put some of the reports that Shannon talked about in there, so at least gives us some history. The trouble is that history only goes back to 2022, September 22, nothing previous. And there's a lot of information that happened before that the public didn't know. And there's new neighbors here. They're asking me what's this about, and I've been trying to share with them and give them some background. So in terms of the notice that came out on this meeting, it was not, I mentioned it wasn't complete in terms of there was no backup information relative to the details of the plan. And in fact, the one layout that was actually presented, plan layout on the website, wasn't even the right one. It was the wrong one. They corrected it after the fact. But I'm really concerned that information being shared with the public through the media that we're using right now is not meeting the needs of the neighborhood. There are many neighbors here that I have that are widowed, single, seniors, that they're not computer, they use a computer for internet, maybe for newspaper and emails, but they don't use it to look into detail of these documents, and they can't find it. So it's a major concern. And I know that some of my neighbors say, well, I don't understand. It's not available to me. So I'm strongly recommending that as soon as possible, we get into public format so people can participate. Going into this, the meeting for right now in terms of the issues, in terms of this planning session. I think the Forest Park subdivision, back in April of 2022, council went and had a presentation, and it gave more details of the what was planned for the subdivision. Unfortunately, the citizens in the neighborhood, we heard nothing about it. It wasn't, we didn't get any feedback or anything in terms of what was decided. And it wasn't until now that we see some of the changes that are being proposed, and in terms of stormwater management, road access, and that type of thing. So I just strongly feel that this Forest Park subdivision definitely needs to be tied in with Kunda Park. Back in the meeting back in October of 2020, planning meeting for our subdivision, it was talked that the residential zoning was going to become R2, change from R1 to site-specific R2. And there were some questions brought up relative to the size of the houses, the setbacks and everything. And one of the comments that was made that in the chart that Shannon brought up, and I think she said that the lot sizes were going to be dropping to a maximum of the new plan is 450 square meters. But just to give you an idea, right now my lot is 80 by 150, which is 1,048 square meters, which is more than double the size of the lots that are planned within the subdivision. I realize they're going to be smaller, but it's just an indication of the increase in the density of the housing that's going to be in there. The other issue I want to talk about is stormwater management. This was a major issue, and it is a major issue for our citizens, especially on the east side of Stella Street. Right now, there are a number of houses that their sump pumps run 24/7, 365 days a year. Some of them have double sump pumps because there's a water issue, and the stormwater pond or the significant wetlands are right into their backyards, and it is a major issue on the east side of Stella, and it will continue. And I can guarantee it's going to be a problem with the new houses that are going to back onto the wetlands in the new subdivision. And I feel that there needs to be some real analysis or serious consideration in terms of the drainage, in terms of elevations, in terms of how they're going to drain the area, because it's going to be, the water's coming and we're not going to stop it. And the storms that we're getting have been more severe, and it needs to be addressed. Right now, there's only two, the main, since they did upgraded Pelham Street last year, they tied into the stormwater sewer on John and Vera Street, which ties into Stella. When the outlets from Stella Street are basically two open culverts that go to the east, and one's off to the Kunda Park extension. The other one's about halfway down between Vera and John, east of Stella Street, and they just dump into the to the east. And the concern there is that water needs to be moved from that area out. One of the things that the plan is right now proposed is that, sorry, so let me step back for a minute. The original plan for stormwater management did not have an open channel way within the Kunda Park subdivision. That is completely new to this latest proposal. So that means now they're going to have stormwater lines off the roadways going east, okay? And that stormwater line will cross the Steve Bauer Trail. That wasn't mentioned. They talked, Shannon didn't, she mentioned sanitary, but didn't mention stormwater. But there will be a stormwater pipe under the Steve Bauer Trail. and my understanding is going to go into, I think it's block 82, I think it is. So then there'll be a sanitary and a stormwater. Maybe the consultants can confirm that, but that's the way I read it, that there's going to be two services going under the Steve Bauer Trail. Now, the channel that they want to put in, that is basically brand new to this plan. And my concern is that it's a fairly lengthy area and it's going right at the back of buildings and it's open. And I know that land is all basically sand. There's no real clay or rock or anything like that to hold it, and vegetation. And I'm really concerned that for the erosion and everything that might be in that area, and also open water relative to insects and mosquitoes and everything else that could happen. And the other one, if there's standing water, safety relative to kids and relative to that, whether that's going to be fenced or how it's going to be guarded to ensure that there's protection of the children and citizens in that area. The next item I'd like to talk about is the roadway plan. Access to this area was originally planned off of Stella Street, off of Port Robinson Road, in the land that's in between the Glen Green School and Steve Bauer Trail. Since the time, as been mentioned already, there's been a both environmental and archaeological study, and the archaeological study has determined that there's a site within that area, archaeological site, that they don't want to disturb. Taking that into account means they got to have a second access. So then they come across the Power Trail. That's been out. Now it's going across the provincially significant wetland. And the concern is that roadway is going to be a totally functional roadway for all traffic, construction traffic, as well as the normal traffic in the area. Just telling, in the last, when they were doing Pelham construction between Port Robinson and Pancake, the town used the Kunda Park or City Hill Street. There's a dead end. They used that as a storage area for gravel, and it was a bear for construction traffic in our neighborhood. And there's lots of issues, and the roads were damaged from it, but nothing has been done. So I'm really concerned that this new roadway, it's across the wetlands, allow for construction traffic. An area that was proposed as of up to 2018 was that there was going to be a roadway. John Street was going to be extended to Kunda Park. I see that that's been removed now, and now they're saying only Kunda Park Boulevard will extend north to across the wetlands. Our concern is that the amount of traffic that is going to be coming in to this area needs to be allowed more direct access. If John Street could be extended south or east to meet Kunda Park, there'd be a direct route off of Pelham Street, down John Street to Kunda Park. The subdivision's right there on the left, and across the roadway over the provincially significant wetlands would allow minimum interruption of the traffic within the rest of the subdivision. It's a major issue that I think that should be still reviewed relative to its merits, and because it was proposed right up until, as I say, 2018. There was a UCC had a proposal that that's what they were going to do is, and that would be basically primary access. Right now, the roadway the traffic going on within our area is a lot of traffic, and pedestrian traffic along Stella Street is a major issue relative to school. The kids go through morning and evening and through the day from Glen A Green School. They walk the Stella Street, and during the construction on Pelham Street, there were a couple near accidents with kids walking to school, and the traffic, the gravel truck and the loaders backing around the neighborhood. It was an issue, and I have real concern that this needs to be addressed in terms of possibly extending John Street to get that roadway relieve some of the traffic going through Stella Street, or you've got to do something to provide a safe travel for the children through that area. It's critical. The other one is the crossing of the significant wetlands. It's narrower than the main roadway, and I think they've commented that it's going to have sidewalks and everything, because I'm concerned that it's got to be allowed for pedestrian traffic as well as bicycle and vehicle traffic. It can't be restricted to only a certain class of vehicles. Right now in our neighborhood, it's posted maximum 10,000 pound weight limit in our neighborhood, and guaranteed nearly every construction truck that will come through with any goods, cement trucks and everything else, will come in with many times more times that weight limit on their trucks. The other item another item is the detail relative to the access to the Steve Bauer Trail. Right now, they were going to make it a 10 meter wide passageway, and I think it was block 82 on the plot plan. And question is, does it need to be 10 meters wide? From my understanding, it's only a pedestrian crosswalk. It could be less. Now, I think it might be the reason it's that wide is because it's going to be stormwater and sanitary going in that same area, but it hasn't been stated that way. So just why is it that wide? The other thing is that there needs to be another access, I would hope, to the north end of Kunda Park, so that you have more than one point of entry onto the Steve Bauer Trail, because that trail it's used often and regular. It's a regular usage. The other item I like to talk about is the land, which is basically the north end of the Kunda Park subdivision between what's planned here. That's that block of land. It ended up with the plan that was sent out. It's not really identified, but it was shown on the original plan. It's that land where the archaeological site is. My concern is that there needs to be some plan on what they're going to use it for. My feeling is that it could possibly be a prime location to put the stormwater pond in at the south end, the archaeological site there, and then if you don't put the stormwater pond in, you put a park in that area, a passive park. You can have the archaeological site fenced and a display or whatever. It could be an educational site, and then north of that, off of Port Robinson Road, I strongly suggest that they look at putting parking for the Steve Bauer Trail, because what the councilors don't realize, and it's not presented here, is the new Station Street extension is going to have an offset in it because the Steve Bauer Trail basically goes directly into the into the Station Street right now. To tie in the new extension, there's going to have to be an offset, and basically the parking space that's there is going to be lost. So my feeling is that there's a good opportunity to use that land at the north end for a parking lot for users of the Steve Bauer Trail. So those are the details I would like to present before council. But I strongly recommend again is that this whole thing of the Kunda Park and Sterling and Forest Park need to be considered as a whole because they're closely related and dependent on each other for services and some of the features that are adjacent. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. I believe we're just going to go right to your wife, Muriel, and you now have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't repeat things that I don't feel aren't important. So if you hear it twice, it's because either myself or I've been hearing from neighbors and things that are of concern. And a major concern, myself and neighbors, is the increased traffic, both during construction and afterwards. Vera and Stella Street both received damage to the actual roadways, to the quality of life of the residents living there when the street was used as the staging area for the construction on Pelham, has been already mentioned. Plus the safety concerns during construction and with future volume of traffic, especially with the school, with Glennie Green School down there at the end of the street. For those children coming and going. And besides the children, we have a lot of seniors who do a lot of walking on the street with that. So it's been mentioned that the crossing down across the wetland over to Kunda Park Boulevard will be adequate for large vehicles, for construction vehicles. I think we would like to see it mandated as the only construction entrance. We don't need those large vehicles on Upper Stella and going into the area there at the north by the school. So that would be a request to consider. If you look at the subdivision plan and put yourself in one of those houses, say on the middle of the Steve Bauer Trail there, and say, okay, I'm going downtown to the grocery store, whatever. You are not going south through Kunda Park and out Merritt Road to Pelham. You are going out to Stella, down and out Vera, up to Pelham. I hope you don't want to do it on a snowy winter day. If the road is at all icy at Vera and Pelham, you will not be getting out there. There are, from what I could see there's about 54, or I would estimate 54 of those 66 houses in that north area, north of the little, where the road goes across the PSW. I would say most of those are going to be going out Stella. That's a significant increase in traffic. When this subdivision, we've known for years, this subdivision was coming. All the original plans had 4 exits. Now it's down to 2. Just so you realize what we're looking at there. We and a lot of the other neighbors supported the trail resolution that banned the roads crossing the Steve Bauer Trail. But we have to realize now that it has created an exit problem with this subdivision. So just so people that are aware of that and appreciate the repercussions of that decision on the neighborhood and the residents who have lived here for 50, 60 years. I also just wanted to confirm the number of crossings across the Steve Bauer Trail, because I think the whole community might be interested in that. I see the pedestrian connection. I believe at that point, the sanitary sewer goes across, the stormwater goes across. How is construction going to be done there? How's the public going to be notified? How long will the trail be closed? What time of year will that be done? These are questions the whole community needs to know. We don't need people who are using that trail and who have been so happy that no roads are going across it to all of a sudden discover construction vehicles digging up the spot for the pedestrian connection and the sewer and sanitary and storm going across there. That's just an information piece, but I think it's important that that's looked at. Some of my other concerns I think have already been addressed by Bill. I might echo that if that archaeological area up there could become a passive park, seeing as the Secunda Park, it doesn't actually have a park. The park is over in Forest Park. There's no actual park in Secunda Park anywhere. I think that's all I wanted to emphasize. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you for your time to present to council. And again, thanks to Bill also. I will now turn to the clerk.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Our next speaker is Graham Pett. Again, please allow Ms. Wilford a moment to bring Mr. Pett into the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and town councillors. Having followed Secunda Park and Forest Park planning over these last 3 years, I'm to the most part pretty pleased to see the productive nature of these plans and how they've evolved, particularly as has involved the preservation of the Steve Bauer Trail and surrounding natural heritage. Just have a few comments to provide. In Secunda Park, it obviously seems unavoidable that road heading south is going to cut through the wetlands. And we certainly hope the developer and the NPCA and town staff will be able to come up with a design to facilitate as much as possible the connectivity between the wetland area. Certainly in terms of wildlife mobility factors are important as well. So certainly the less road, the better, but we realize it's a bit of a tough choice had to be made in terms of that particular roadway. Concerning Block 82 in Secunda Park, it's great to see that we are working on making sure there's connectivity between our neighborhoods and our trail system, and that's really good planning. It's a big area. I mean, 10 meters, it's kind of been mentioned. And I understand there's also needs to be emergency vehicle access in this area as well. I think my big concern is that this area doesn't get paved over, that hopefully LID principles can be put into effect here. And we somehow naturalize that area as much as possible. Because the worst case scenario, if it's paved over, is it going to become a parking lot, which I don't think is the intention at all of this area. But we just want that noted. The other issue around the density issue, I guess I'll run counter to some of the other folks who are speaking. And that is, I guess I would say I would have been happier with a higher density. I think was it 84 or something initially, and it's been scaled back somewhat. I think we have a problem with density in this town. We just don't really have enough of it. We know from the last census period, in terms of 562 housing units. We barely have two people, not even two people in a housing unit. I just don't think we can keep building big lots. We don't have a lot of land left. It's precious. So I certainly would have been in favor, and I realize probably the developers, all the work he's done here, he's not going to go back and redesign again. But I think for future reference, we need to increase density. As concerns Forest Park, I've seen the engineer's report regarding their proposal to align Station Street, the new Station Street, with the existing one. And there's a case for that. You know, you want to have safe intersections. There's a lot of people in this area. There's kids walking to school, et cetera, et cetera. So that does make sense. I realize there's not a formal proposal for that modification to the Forest Park Station Street design at this point, but I presume it might be coming. And again, we just ask that because it is going to potentially have to veer into the Steve Bauer Trail allowance there, that it just be done with taking the absolute minimum of the trail and the trees in that area. Certainly, hopefully not a whole redesign of Station Street going all the way down. You know, a little bit of curve in the road there, and to join back into the existing plans for the Station Street, you know, to be designed for Forest Park. So I would just ask council to really pay attention to that issue should it come up in the future. I personally just want to thank the town councilors who engaged with many of us when the Steve Bauer Trail was threatened, and that this was brought to their attention, and they responded, and particularly councilors Wink and Hildebrand for bringing forth the motion to protect our major trail systems throughout Pelham. So this is just not a Steve Bauer Trail issue. It could be a Jerry Burkout Trail issue down the road, and hopefully that's headed off now at this point. I think the message is loud and clear that citizens of Pelham cherish their trails and the green space, and to know that they are protected and for future generations is certainly something that's greatly appreciated. I just want to say a short thanks to Sterling Realty for your willingness to listen, to engage in meaningful dialogue, and to be open to undertaking the workarounds in your planning. Again, this is sincerely appreciated. Hopefully it's a good blueprint for future development in this town. And lastly, this 3-year odyssey we have undertaken together. It's a lesson for, I think, for our citizens, and that is no matter the number of persons involved in an issue, when concerned citizens come together, speak up and act, that good things can happen. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Pett, for taking the time to make these comments and coming to the council meeting tonight. Much appreciated. I now turn to the deputy clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, our next speaker is Mr. Mike Jones.
Mr. Jones, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I come here today to read to you in my capacity as president and on behalf of the board of directors and the members of Pelham Advocacy for Trees and Habitat, PAT. Kunda Park Phase 4 file is a matter we at PAT have been very much engaged in for several years now, particularly as this development, along with Forest Park development, was initially seen as a potential far-reaching negative implications for the sections of the Steve Bauer Trail, which bisects these developments, and overall for the natural heritage characteristics associated with the trail. We at PAT were mostly appreciated for the January 11, 2021 motion passed by the council that provided protection for our existing nature paths in Pelham, from impacts of future developments. Our sincere thanks to Council John Winks and Bob Hildebrand for having brought forth this motion. I am pleased to convey that in our review of Kunta Park for draft plans, in particular, the December 16, 2022 correspondence from Upper Canada Consultants to the town, we feel quite relieved that many of our concerns have been raised with the town and the developer Sterling Realty. Now that has been addressed with new plans. Therefore, we at PATH wish to go on record that we are generally concurring with the Kunta Park for development as submitted. Having said this, there are several matters we would wish to make council and staff aware as these development procedures go to the final designate design stage. These are the following. A, the west of the Steve Bauer Trail is generally quite thinly treed. Where there is a stand of only 1 or 2 trees wide, the chances of these trees being blown down increase exponentially. With the construction of the naturalized channel Block 81, there could be quite a bit of disturbance of the natural landscape in that area. Therefore, we respectfully request that a major tree replanting initiative be planned for the west side of the Steve Bauer Trail. B, as concerned the new street, Block 83, which bisects the Environmental Plan 1 and Plan 2, environmentally sensitive wetlands, we understand that the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority is to be consulted with regards to the construction of that road. We feel it is vitally important to maintain at least some sort of degree of connectivity, including for wildlife movement between these two environmental zones. It is our sincere hope the design of this road will foster this connectivity. C, while we might anticipate some occasional disruption to the citizens' use of the Steve Bauer Trail due to further construction activity, we respectfully request that developer and the town, as much as possible, keep the Steve Bauer Trail open and safe for citizens' enjoyment of this trail. D, we at PATH are highly supportive of low-income development. Thus, we respectfully request that the town of Pelham and the developer work together to integrate as much as possible the LID concepts into these developments. In addition, we understand from a previous motion of council, as subsequently confirmed with the town of Pelham, the director of planning, that information could be exchanged regarding the sister development to Kunta Park, for that being Forest Park. While we understand council did pass the draft plan in this regard, a number of details were lacking in the plan that we should like to be briefly addressed. I would comment that while it is possible such matter be addressed in more detail further plans, we at PATH would like the following to be on record with the hopes that the future planning initiatives will take issues into consideration. E, it is not clear to us in the initial Forest Park plan if there is going to be a public access point for the citizens from Forest Park to enter or exit the Steve Bauer Trail. We certainly hope there will be. We believe that providing a connectivity of our trails and sidewalks is vitally important to encourage active living transportation of the citizenry. We would not want to see trees cut down to make such an access point. We are wondering if an access point could be considered to be constructed around the area where the naturalization channel, Block 81 in Kunta Park, exit underneath the Steve Bauer Trail into a large concrete culvert. That area is barely treed and assuming some construction activity will take place there, that would be the best location to install an access point. F, we respectfully request that no sidewalks be installed on the west side of the construction new Station Street. This will protect as many trees as possible while minimizing the disturbance of the natural landscape as currently exists between the west side of the Station Street allowance and the east side of the Steve Bauer allowance. And G, although not in the initial forest park plan, we understand that there's a possibility of a request may be forthcoming to directly align the new Station Street with the existing Station Street. In the current plan, they are offset. Should such a request be forthcoming, it might appear that the section of the Steve Bauer Trail allowance would be required to make this happen. Possible negative impacts such as accessibility of the entrance to the point of the Steve Bauer Trail at Port Robinson Road and for the potential loss of trees would concern us. We are certainly appreciative of the ongoing communication with town staff as well as council. Should plans be changed, we would like to be put notice on that. Finally, we know that our tree canopy in Fawn Hills is approximately 32%. We know some trees will be unavoidably lost as a result of these developments. If we are able to maintain, let alone increase the tree canopy, tree planting in these developments must be maximized, not minimized. We implore the developer and the town of Pelham to do the right thing when it comes to tree canopy. In conclusion, may we convey our thanks to Sterling Realty, Town of Pelham staff, and the mayor and council of the town of Pelham for having to listen to, engaging with, and acting upon the concerns of the citizens of Pelham. It is our sincere hope that what has transpired will serve as a blueprint for future engagement with the citizens of Pelham, along with environmental organizations such as PATH. I want to thank you very much. And I lastly like to say, follow the path from Mike Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Jones, for your presentation and for taking the time to appear before council tonight. Go ahead.
I said I would like to thank you and the town and the councilors for allowing us.
No problem at all. Thank you, sir. I now turn to the deputy clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our next public speaker is Magdalena Voschenia.
Magdalena, you have the floor when you're ready to begin.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for taking into account our previous comments. I can see that we have less lots on the proposed development, which makes me quite happy. I also see that there will be a wildlife corridor connecting our wetlands to green space in Forest Park. Unfortunately, we are not able to connect with Port Robinson, as it was explained earlier, but the fact that the Kunda Park connection will be main construction, for me, it's a good idea because it will keep the construction track tracks away from Stella Street, which my previous neighbors explained would be pretty dangerous for the kids going to school. I do have a question though, because there was an environmental assessment of the property, and from what I understand, they were trying to limit residential physical impact, cutting vegetation, compost dumping, extending, and because of that, they requested that the development will be fenced from the wetlands. I wanted to ask if the developer is planning to do that. And if yes, are they also planning to fence our properties? I'm on the east side of Stella Street, our properties from the future development. And the second one was tree preservation. So we do have several trees behind our backyard. I understand some of them are not in perfect condition, so probably will have to come down. But I'm hoping they will hire some kind of specialist to assess properly green canopy in the area. Those are my questions. And other than that, I would like just to thank for the participating in this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking the time to appear before council tonight and for your questions that I'm sure either town staff or the consultant will answer further on into the meeting. I now turn to the deputy clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, our next speaker is Christine Kreutzer.
And Christine, whenever you're ready, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you. I appreciate that. Most of my questions or concerns have been answered. I am still disappointed that we don't have a direct access north out of the new development. I am concerned about the high volume of traffic entering onto Stella, which is a dead end. So essentially going one way, and where there is school at the end. But I'm pleased to hear that the crossing over the wetlands will allow for the construction vehicles to enter via Kunda, because it is my biggest concern for the safety of children and the school. I came from an area where there was a lot of construction, and a 6-year-old girl was killed because of the increased vehicles and construction that occurred in the residential area bypassing where the construction zone was. So it's close to my heart. And I think the other thing that comes first to mind is even the fact that the sidewalks on Stella at that end of the school, at that end of Stella by the school, there's only one set of sidewalks, and that does cross Street A where it would exit onto Stella. Just looking quickly at my notes, I think that was basically my main concern, is the volume, because the majority of the development is at the north end, and I counted 55 homes there. And I do not see anybody who's traveling west or north unless they're heading to the highway, specifically going all the way down to Merritt and across and up Rice Road. I see them going down Stella and crossing Pelham, or going north on Pelham, and even avoiding the center by going through Port Robinson. And that's my biggest concern. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Christine, for appearing before council tonight, and we appreciate your comments. I turn now to the deputy clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our next and last public speaker is John Guzwitsky.
Thank you. Oh, John Kozowski. John, you have the floor when ready.
There you go. I thought there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, we have been residents of Stella Streets for 30 years and knew this was going to be a subdivision since we purchased, so we are not NIMBYs. That said, we have had legitimate concerns for all the various proposals for this subdivision, the primary one being road and construction access. This new plan shows a second exit, which is an improvement. Extending John Street would be a huge improvement. Please consider this option. A temporary construction access either off of Port Robinson or from the new Station Street extension would be a possibility that would solve all the traffic, dust, road degradation problems. We would also request that finished grades in this new subdivision not be much higher than our backyards for drainage and privacy. We have seen other subdivisions in town where this becomes a major issue. I have seen drainage issues have been a big deal, and we see that they've added a naturalized channel, which is in line with what we were proposing before. We would like to make sure that there's a swale with catch basins between our backyards and the subdivision to promote drainage. If there's no catch basins, the swale will not work and will be landscaped over very shortly by new residents. In previous discussions, we were also told that the houses backing onto us would be bungalows, so they would not be looming over us. Some of us have pools and would like to see the sun before 1 p.m. Could this be put in writing? Overall, with some minor adjustments, this is the best case scenario for us. Everyone is getting 99% of what they wanted. In closing, I'd like to thank the town staff, councilors, mayor, and of course this developer for all their hard work over the many years to come to this point. It's been a long road, and I appreciate everything you guys have done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John, for taking the time to appear before council tonight, and we appreciate your comments. Now turn to the deputy clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that does conclude our pre-registered public speakers. However, I can confirm that we have received an email from a Karen Guzzi. I would like to know why there aren't any townhouses planned for Kunda Park phase 4. Intensification has got to be shared by all residents of Pelham. Otherwise, Mr. Mayor, it is 7:02 p.m. and we've received no further emails. Therefore, you may close the public portion and move to committee input.
Okay, thank you. So we will indeed close the public portion of this meeting, and we will turn to committee input on the presentations that were made at the very beginning of this meeting. Is there questions, comments from members of committee? Councilor Eckert, do I see your hand?
Yes, you do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the planning department, Barb, if I may call you that, and Shannon. One of the things I appreciated as a new council member was the timelines that you sent to us. That helped me out quite a bit to see what's been going on for the last 20 odd years for this subdivision. So thank you very much for that. It was a big help. I have one question. And it was a concern of mine, and it comes from a concern from Mr. Nicholson, who sent it in. The reason for the 10-meter wide access, what's the reason for that being so wide?
Okay, but let me go to the clerk. Madam Clerk, are we addressing the presenters now? Or do we just, that would seem to be the logical thing, or how do you want to do this?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. If you would like to address the applicant or agent, you are welcome to do so.
Okay, excellent then. Perhaps either town staff or the applicant's consultant could answer why the pedestrian access is granted, I believe it's around 30 feet. Shannon, Ms. Luak, yourself, or should we go to the consultant?
I can address it, Mr. Mayor. The width of the trail right now is proposed at 10 meters. It has a twofold purpose. One would be for pedestrian access, and there is also a sanitary sewer underneath. I did have a conversation with Mr. Kernahan earlier, and he indicated there may be room to reduce that slightly, maybe not down to the width that Mr. Nichols or Nicholson indicated in his comments, but there may be the ability to reduce it a bit.
Okay, Councillor. Councillor Eckert.
I see that Mr. Kernahan has his hand up. I wanted to hear from him as well.
Okay, Matt, further comment?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a point of clarification, there's both sanitary and a storm sewer that are running through that block. So there are engineering standards that require they be separated. Off the top of my head, I don't know what exactly that distance must be, but as Ms. LaRocque mentioned, we've heard loud and clear. So we'll take that back and see if there's something we can do to reduce that access, if that's the will of council.
Councillor Eckert.
Yep, thank you very much for that response. And the last question I have is, we heard from a couple of people presenting about extending John Street. From the way I looked at it, if we extend John Street, does that not go right through the wetland?
To Ms. LaRocque.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That's correct. That would be further disturbance to the wetland.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. I believe that's why they chose the option they did. If you can clarify that, Ms. LaRocque, is that John Street, if extended, would indeed go be a longer trip through the wetland as the presently proposed route. Is that not correct?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. The extension of Kunda Park Boulevard northerly was less of a disturbance to the wetland, and so more desirable from that perspective.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other council questions? I now go to Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been thinking about that pedestrian access, and I think we also take into account that there's likely going to be bicycles and other things utilizing something like that. And in many places, it's almost, it may sound particularly a little odd, but I've been in places where they put dots down the middle of an access to try and encourage, let's say, traffic patterns for people coming off the trails and going each way, whether it's for a cyclist with an image on it or with a pedestrian image on it. So, and I think the fact that we do have to consider stormwater drainage is a critical component that's going to be the bottom line out of everything. People are concerned about water, and I guess I'm one of them who always says I'd rather overbuild a connection than underbuild something that might turn out down the line as being a bit of an issue.
Okay, thank you for those comments, Councillor Kerr. Any other input, members? Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I also have a comment on block 82. I understand the 10-meter wide requirement, but I prefer it not to be totally all paved because it potentially will become a parking lot in my view. So I think there's an opportunity there to make that some kind of development that necessarily doesn't have the look of a parking lot. The second question I have is with regards to the construction schedule of this development. What I don't want to see is this development starting and it be phased in many different phases. So the question I have for Mr. Kernahan is, once construction starts on this development, is it proposed to be continuous?
And Matt, can you answer that at this time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, construction speed is a bit market dependent, but I can tell you it's desirable from the developer's perspective to be in and out as quickly as possible. So every effort is always made to complete development quickly.
Counselor?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Hildebrand. Any other committee member? I see Counselor Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To me, there's a lot to like about this new plan. There was also some legitimate concerns that I think people had, in particular about low impact development features, and I trust that that's going to be considered as part of the new plan. And the idea of the swales, we've got believe it's a 1.2 setback for any patios and open patios and things. And my question for the planners is, does that include pools and that type of thing?
Thank you, Councilor Olson. To Ms. Lulock.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It would be for the main structure, the 1.2 meter setback. The required setback for pools would be what's consistent across town. So I believe it may be a 1 meter setback off the top of my head. I'll have to confirm for you.
Thank you.
Yes, I was thinking for the one suggestion that we had was for catch basins along with the swales, and I guess I was kind of expecting that in the 1.2 we would have some kind of, that would be where the swale would be, and I guess perhaps that's a little narrow for that type of thing. I'm also in favor of the 10 meter access, because I think that creates an openness. I think it's it comes up to a trail which is going to be dark, and I think that's going to be quite an acceptable thing to have a wider expanse there. And we heard a comment from Mr. and Mrs. Heska about the natural or the archaeological area, I'll call it. So there were some useful comments in there as well, but I realize that's not part of the presentation tonight. But I think this is a great improvement, and I'd like to thank Sterling and the planning staff for their work in this, because it proves once again that talking and listening is a better way of going about things. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Olson. Turn again to any further comment. I see Councilor Wink.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I want to thank Sterling Developments, town staff, Upper Canada consultants for getting us to this stage. It's been a long haul that, for some of us, we've only been working on this for 5 years, but you look at how long this has taken since 2002 to get to this point. But some question about density, we have to look back at why we're looking at only single family dwellings, and that was the proposal based in 2002, and can't be changed. This is going to be the last development in Pelham that will have this type of lot size, and the fact that here's an opportunity for those final lots in town to have, it's not 80 by 150 like Mr. Heska's lot, but they're still substantially larger than those in East Swan Hill. So this is the last kick at the cat for those types of size of lots. I think we have to realize that there's a lot of questions with respect to this subdivision agreement. We're looking at a zoning amendment here. We're not looking at finalizing anything at this point in time. And final subdivision agreement includes things such as erosion and sediment control plan, grading plans, tree preservation plan, restoration and enhancement plan, ecological monitoring plan, this storm and sewage drainage plan. So there's a lot more work that has to be done. What we're being asked here at this point in time is to approve the plan and the zoning on this. And I commend the work that's been done on this. I commend the fact that we're minimizing the impact to the provincial significant wetlands. I was really glad to hear from Mr. Kernahan that there's going to be a construction access plan, and that's going to come through that part as opposed to Stella Street. So that's going to minimize the truck traffic on Stella Street. So it's been a well thought out plan. I'd like to thank all the residents for making the comments that they did. Everyone's concerned about this, but I think, as someone had alluded to, we're 99% pleased with this, and you'll never get perfection. And if you can get 99%, that's pretty darn good. So again, there's no questions that I have, just comments, but thank all those involved in this. This is great.
Thank you, Councillor. And again, just to reiterate that if this, because this subdivision was started so long ago in 2002, that is why the lot sizes are there. If this was a new development starting now, we would have a lot higher density rates. There's no doubt about that. Because we go by 2002, that is why this subdivision has the single family dwellings, and the fact that the lot sizes are bigger than what are presently allowed. Any other comments from committee members? Councillor Nesnick.
Hi, thank you. So yes, I just would like to, all the questions I did have were answered through the presentations tonight. So thank you very much for that. I heard from a few residents and their concerns. It sounds as though if they haven't been addressed at the meeting tonight, you'll take those back and then come back with a further report when you do come with a recommendation for us answering those questions. So Councillor Wink once again said it most eloquently, that there is a lot more to this than just what's there right now. So I guess one of my big questions might be is that if just reassurance with regards to the drainage, I think is the big question and the big concern for residents on Stella Street as well. So if that's addressed, and then, so do those properties come with an easement? Like I have an easement on the back of my property that I can't change, the little ditch that's back there. So I'm not sure if this is the time to ask that, or whether that would just be written into those contracts along those lots.
So yes, Councillor Nesnick, we will ask the town planner, and that little ditch officially, I believe, is known as a swale. Go to you, Ms. Luak.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the final lot grading plans won't be completed at this point. That's done as a condition of draft plan approval, and that would determine where those swales and potential catch basins will be located, and who will have easements and who will not on their properties. So that will come next if this development is approved.
Thank you. That was all my questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, and thank you, Councillor. The question again to the town planner. So we have had a lot of questions asked by residents. Will the town now attempt to go through and answer those questions individually and get back to the residents? How does that process work, please?
Mr. Mayor, typically what we do is we respond in writing through our recommendation report. I did note down some of the questions that were asked by the presenters earlier, and I can attempt to address some of those. there was a question about whether the wetlands would be fenced at the rear of the lots that will be adjacent. So yes, that will be a condition of approval. One of the conditions requested by the region included that fencing, as well as planting and invasive species removals in those areas. The region's comments are available for anyone to read as an attachment to the information report. So the list of requested conditions are there. There may be further conditions coming from the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority with respect to how that area is treated. But certainly fencing to ensure that there isn't encroachment or dumping into that feature will be a requirement. There is no requirement for fencing along the rear of the properties on the east side of Stella Street. That could be a condition requested by council if council wishes, but it's not a requirement. The purpose of the fencing of the wetland is really to protect the wetland. The trees, whether the trees behind those homes on Stella Street would be preserved, I don't believe that that would be possible given where the lot lines are and the building envelopes and services, but perhaps that's something that Mr. Kernahan and I can speak about further and I can address in the recommendation report. And the question that came in by email about why there aren't townhouses, I think Councillor Wink and Mr. Mayor, you yourself addressed that. Typically, we do require a mix of housing options in these subdivisions. However, this is a legacy file. And in 2002, it included single detached dwellings. In addition to that, there's been an advantage that Sterling Realty also owns the Forest Park property. And so a wide mix of housing options was provided in the Forest Park development to make up for the fact that the Kunda Park Phase 4 development only includes single detached dwellings. So Forest Park includes townhouses, apartments, singles, semis, quite a range of different housing options. Mr. Heska had some questions as well about, he was concerned about several disruptions to the trail. Mr. Kernahan confirmed that there would be both storm and sanitary underneath the pedestrian connection. So not two separate disturbances to the trail for those two services. And the naturalized channel will go underneath the trail where there's an existing culvert. So there's not a further disturbance in that area either. He had asked a question as to why that was no longer a piped water course, why it was an open naturalized channel. That's now considered best practice. It's not a great idea to pipe water courses, and they're left open, they're naturalized, they're planted, and they can perform a good function. That's also a requirement of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority that it remain open and naturalized. I think the only other thing I wanted to address briefly was the notice that was received that Mr. Heska mentioned. When we're mailing out these notices, I don't have the benefit of sending full-size plans to everyone. The cost would be enormous. And the same thing with printing out reports and all of that. And so what we do is we hope that by the notice, we make people aware that there is an application and that they can, and who they can contact for more information if they wish. We do post them online. I realize online may not be accessible to everybody. However, we still welcome phone calls and counter visits and old-fashioned letters. So we are available. And I think those are the only comments. If there's any other questions or comments, feel free to ask.
Okay, thank you for that, Ms. Luak. If I could go to Matt Kernahan, and realizing you're not the engineer on this problem, but ever since I became mayor, I keep getting a monthly magazine called Trenchless Technology. Do you know, have you heard discussions when you take these pipes under the Steve Bauer Trail? Do you know, yes or no, will they be disrupting the trail, or will they indeed be able to do a horizontal boring and just leave the trail intact and do the pipes that way without having to open up the trail? I apologize for putting you on the spot like that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the question. I was very much anticipating it, but not before the meeting. So as you rightfully pointed out, I'm not the engineer on this file, but I can commit to providing a direct response to that question back to planning staff so they can provide it either to you directly or before the recommendation report or include it within the recommendation report when it comes forward. So I apologize for not having the answer, but I can commit to getting it to you, certainly.
Very good. I appreciate the answer. And again, I apologize for springing that on you like that. Thank you. Any other questions, comments from any committee members? Not seeing any. I turn to the clerk.
For you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to item 4, being the presentation of resolutions. 4.5. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Kerr that committee receive report 2023-38 for information as it pertains to file numbers 2016-19-020-02 and AM-03-2020, and that committee direct planning staff to prepare the recommendation report on this topic for council's consideration. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on the resolution, council committee members? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. For the vote, I'll begin with Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Councillor Kerr,
Yes.
Councillor Niznik,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart,
Yes.
Mayor Duncan.
Yes.
Thank you. That carried. Mr. Mayor, I have a motion put forth by Councillor Eckhart that committee receive the applicant's presentation for information. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, thank you. One last time, any further discussion on this motion? Not seeing any, Madam Deputy Clerk?
Thank you. For the vote, I'll begin with Councillor Kerr,
Yes.
Councillor Niznik,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Mayor Duncan.
Yes.
Thank you. That carries. Mr. Mayor, I have a motion put forth by Councillor Niznik that committee receive the written correspondence as listed on the agenda, and that committee receive the verbal presentations made by the public as listed on the agenda, and that committee receive the email correspondence to the clerks@pelham.ca email address. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Thank you. Any further discussion, council? Not seeing any, Madam Deputy Clerk?
Thank you. For the vote, I'll begin with Councillor Niznik. Sorry, Councillor Niznik. Thank you. Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Mayor Duncan.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That carries. Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to adjournment. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Wink that the special committee of the whole public meeting under the Planning Act be adjourned. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Any further discussion? Not seeing any, Deputy Clerk?
Thank you. For the vote, I'll begin with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Mayor Duncan.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is now 7:28 p.m. and you may gavel out your meeting.
Good night, everyone. Oh, good meeting. Thank you.